Welcome to Stick to Sports. I'm Ben Diamond.
And I'm Brian Burrows. Today, we take a look at college basketball, the NHL, and a controversial crowd problem.
Roll it.
And he's fouled.
After taking down number 1 UConn last Tuesday, the Creighton Blue Jays, the number 15 ranked Creighton Blue Jays, tried to come in to St. John's and take another one. Unfortunately, they were unable to, as the Johnnies beat them 80-66 after a lot of back and forth. Rick Pitino kind of ripping his guys a little bit, kind of creating a little bit of unrest, but still able to come away with the ranked victory. And although their future in March might not be certain yet, it certainly helps that they took the victory here tonight, or last night I should say, against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, we're seeing a few upsets already in this leading up to March period. We're only a couple weeks away from conference tournaments, and we're seeing some of these middle of the pack conference teams really taking down the top dogs. And we're seeing top dogs taking down other top dogs, creating a lot of upsets, a lot of movement in the AP poll, which we'll get to a little bit later in the later. But for St. John's, or just the season in general, it's been a lot of kind of parity. I know we see that a lot in college basketball. Top dogs don't win every single game. Very rarely do you see a lot of wins from one team without a couple losses sprinkled in there, especially late in the season. But the big teams always seem to have that late season hiccup. I mean, we saw UConn lose to Creighton, as you just mentioned. Purdue lost to Ohio State a couple weeks ago. Kentucky killed Bama in a ranked matchup on Saturday. It's been a lot of upsets and a lot of just weirdness that we're going to see how it shakes out once we get to March.
And I think that's the most exciting part. That's why everybody loves March Madness, because of that weirdness, because of that wildness of these certain matchups between these teams. And I do think that St. John's might have a little bit of a realistic chance just because they can, with that win, but it's very low. It's very low. They're 16-12 right now overall. They're 7th place in the Big East. Their chances are so slim, but I mean, a win like that does inspire a little bit of confidence and could, shape their future a little bit better than it had been had they lost.
The Houston Cougars have become a powerhouse in men's basketball, but the Baylor Bears were not afraid of them. They came back from 16 at the half and tied it with an and-one layup with 4 seconds to go. They would miss the and-one free throw, and the game would go to overtime, where Houston would then take down the Bears 82-76. After transferring from Baylor, L.J. Cryers returned to the Foster Pavilion and saw him score 15 points, one of 4 Cougars to reach double digits. Ben, now ranked number 1 by the AP, are Houston the team to beat with March Madness right around the corner?
I think you can't really put one team in that team to beat category. I think Houston is definitely one of them, but I think they're right there with the UConn. They're probably right there with the Purdue, even though people are really saying, oh, can Purdue really produce when it comes to March? We don't know. We haven't really seen a lot of inspiring stuff from them. So I think UConn and Houston are the 2 teams you could say have that target on their back come March time. But I mean, Jamal Shead was not efficient against Baylor. He really wasn't. He only scored 12 points, which is not, normal for him so far this season. But he was a facilitator. He had 10 assists. He put up the double-double, and he was still able to spread the ball around and put up the points in order to win this game against Baylor.
Yeah, I really like Houston going into March this year. They are the best defense in the country, points per game wise at 56.1. They have an 18-point differential. They just do it well on both ends of the court. They are just going to be one of those teams that is going to make that deep run, and we'll see if they can kind of finally overcome that hump and get to win that national championship. It's going to be hard to get over UConn, who have looked like a number 1 all year, as well as Purdue. But adding L.J. Cryer as an offensive addition from Baylor, and then Jamal Shead as a second option as a passer is huge. They are guard heavy, so their big man teams may be hard for them to beat, but for the most part, Houston is going to be one of the teams to watch in March.
Absolutely, and there was another big upset over this past weekend as Wake Forest defeated Duke with a huge second half, putting up 47 points to Duke's 41 in the second half to take down the Blue Devils, who, once again, yet another ranked team. And we're looking at, a team where Kyle Filipowski, he led the team but only had 17 points. Wasn't really doing a ton. But I mean, the Demon Deacons being led by Hunter Salas, dropping 29 points. So this team, I mean, you see Wake Forest, they bring Duke in and are able to beat him. I mean, again, another March-esque win for the Demon Deacons.
Yeah, Wake Forest is looking like a scary team to beat, but when it comes to Duke, honestly, I kind of think they're frauds. They have a really good starting five, but you get into the depth, you get into the bench, and they're kind of lacking. They're led by Filipowski, who is one of the best big men in the country. Like, I think he's really, really hard to stop. But they got beat by UNC. They got beat by Arizona. Those are two of the best teams in the country this year. And then they have a couple bad losses. This Demon Deacons team is not one I consider a bad loss, but Georgia Tech and Pitt, I really just don't know. They're going to match up well with the mid-major teams, but they just don't feel like, to me, like they're going to get past the Sweet 16 this year. And if they do, it's an Elite 8 exit, definitely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the theme that might have played into this is the shooting. I mean, we saw it in this game against Wake Forest. Wake Forest couldn't miss. I mean, they were 60% from the field and 53% from three. But even though Duke was also really efficient on offense, 53 from the field and 44 from three, but their defense really let them down. I think that has to do a little bit with that depth, not really relying on those bench pieces. And because of that, their guys start to get a little tired. So in that second half, that's when Wake Forest really went on a run, put up a ton of points, and that's when everything started to really spiral away.
Following the upset of the Duke Blue Devils on Saturday, fans of Wake Forest rushed the court to celebrate the win. In the midst of the court storming, fans ran into Blue Devil star Kyle Filipowski. Filipowski was then helped off the court, limping to the locker room. This is the second instance this season of a star player being run into. We look back at Caitlin Clark getting run into after Ohio State upset Iowa back in January. With this being the second instance, our question now becomes, should court storming remain legal, or does the NCAA have to do something to stop it?
I mean, I personally feel like you can't take out court storming. It's such a huge, I wouldn't say it's just a huge piece of what makes college sports so special, especially like you see it in football, you see it now, of course, in basketball. So taking it out, you watch those old videos of buzzer beaters and you see the fans rush the court, and that's what makes it so special. So I feel like if the NCAA were to take it out, really take out a little bit of the magic that the sport has in college. But then again, player safety has to come first, so they need to find a way to either keep it in and find a way to keep them safe, or take it out completely and really take away that magical moment.
No, I completely agree with you. I love the atmosphere it brings. It is so much fun to watch a college basketball game. You see the upset, and the fans just storm the court, and I'm just sitting there like, I kind of wish I was one of them. It doesn't matter if am I a fan of the team or not, but it just does. It does. It feels dangerous. We've seen Filipowski, we've seen Caitlin Clark now, and there's got to be other instances of the other players out there who have been run into and almost been injured or been injured. There's not many documented cases, but now with it being star players, I think it comes to the forefront and comes to the light of the NCAA, and I think they're going to try to do at least regulate it a little bit, maybe even finding teams, so the teams kind of have to take it into their own hands.
And that will do it for the first block here on Stick to Sports. When we come back, we'll talk some NHL, NBA, and a little bit more of the MLB, some free agency here on WTOP 10.
Okay, a couple things.
Say, President Stanley, whenever there's bad weather, who would you turn to?
I'd turn to Storm Team 10.
No,
right
but you've
here.
got to say it like this. Storm Team 10. Say it with me. Storm Team 10.
Roll it.
Jill
Should
told
we
me it
tell
was
him?
Kitty from Glee. Yeah, what is
It's
it?
Al Roker.
Welcome back to Stick to Sports. Last night, Patrick Kane returned to Chicago for the first time as a Detroit Red Wing, and it ended in insane fashion as he was able to bury home the OT winner past Peter Mrazek to take the victory for the Red Wings. And I mean, he's really been impressive this season, coming back from a bunch of injuries. And, to put up the production he has, I mean, nobody really expected from him. He's in his late 30s, coming back from big injuries, and it's hockey. It's it's a sport where you really need to be healthy, and he's been able to do that for them so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, even at 36, you say he's still producing at a pretty high level. But I think the biggest thing about Patrick Kane is this Red Wings team is still in the playoff hunt. They're sitting in that first wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference, and having a veteran, a guy who's been to the Cup, who's won the Cup, like Patrick Kane, is going to be huge for the locker room presence coming into this playoff race, coming into the playoffs, if they do eventually make it. I mean, they traded away Bertuzzi last year. He was kind of the veteran of that team, and when they weren't in it, they traded away for assets. They brought in Patrick Kane. So they're only 4 points behind the Leafs right now. He's got 12 goals, 16 assists this season, and I think even the production doesn't pick up too much. He's going to be a huge presence for them.
Absolutely, and I mean, right now, Kane, 28 points on the season in 27 games. Exactly what I want to see from a veteran presence who's come in and really has injected some life into this Red Wings team.
With about 25 games to go, the Minnesota Wild and the Seattle Kraken are fighting to stay in the wild card race. The Wild are currently 4 points out of the second wild card spot, while the Kraken are 7. In the matchup 2 nights ago, it was the Wild coming out on top 5-2, with Kaprizov scoring twice and Zuccarello grabbing 4 assists. Ben, both squads made the playoffs last year but are now on the outside looking in. Can either make it back to the Cup?
To the Cup, I'm not so sure, but at least to make a run for the playoffs, definitely. I mean, the Wild have a solid roster, and to make a late push, I mean, they had a Calder favorite or a hopeful in Brock Faber on the defensive side, and they have also, as you mentioned, Kirill Kaprizov, who's been fantastic as well for these last few seasons. And again, this season, they need more positive growth from their goaltenders, Fleury and Gustafsson, but if they can keep that up, they can get there. And then for the Kraken, Matty Beniers needs to get back from what he has last season. 24 points this season, 15 in wins. So if he can keep getting those points in wins with that production, they'll be able to continue winning hockey games. Now, moving over to the NBA. On Sunday, the Indiana Pacers defeated the Dallas Mavericks 133-111 in a game where both Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving played particularly well, with Doncic scoring 33 and Irving scoring 29. On the other side, Miles Turner scored 33 points of his own in the victory. Tyrese Halliburton scored 17 points and had 10 assists in the victory for his 33rd double-double. Brian, can the Pacers keep up this pace?
I'm not 100% sure. They have a pretty inexperienced roster when it comes to playoff pushes, playoff races. I mean, they're led by Tyrese Halliburton, who hasn't really been there yet. He's really young. They have Siakam, though, which is a really good addition, not only because he works really well with Halliburton, but he's also been to the playoffs. He's been to the finals, and he's won it. So he's going to be really huge for them. He's going to have to kind of be the leader coming down the stretch here. Trading away Hield, though, I think personally is going to hurt. It kind of takes away the push, the outside scoring. And they really I don't think they can rely on Benedict Mathurin at all. As a young guard in his rookie season, he's just not going to be that guy. It's going to have to be Halliburton and Siakam.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about Miles Turner, he kind of seemed like the forgotten man. So to see him put up 33 is huge this late in the season, as the Hawks have officially lost Trae Young for the foreseeable future. And right now, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how they deal with it, because they're under 500 with him. So being without him, it's going to be a little bit scary to see if this team can make a push. Brian, do you think that they can stay afloat with him out, or do you think that it might be a little difficult?
I think it's going to be difficult. They've been kind of on that bubble in and out the entire season. They're going to need DeJounte Murray to step up. He had almost had the triple-double in the last game. He's going to need similar stats to that the entire rest of the season. They're going to need players like Sadiq Bey and Yukio Kongwu to step into bigger roles and kind of fill in the production that they're missing. The passing and the facilitating they're missing from Trae Young is going to be hard to replace. But I just don't think they're going to sneak in this year, especially with losing their top player in Trae Young.
I completely agree. I mean, he's the catalyst of the team, really scoring the points and facilitating with his assists. So him being out is going to put a lot on DeJounte Murray to step up into a bigger role and try and keep the team afloat. As the Knicks and Celtics faced off in a possible Eastern Conference playoff matchup, and although the Knicks are dealing with injuries, they played a close game with the Celtics until the Celtics started to pull away in the third quarter. Do you think the Knicks, fully healthy, can play even closer or even beat the Celtics team, or do you think the Celtics are unstoppable?
Closer, yes. I don't know if they'll beat them in the regular season, but if these two teams face off in the playoffs, I really don't know which way it's going to go. The Celtics seem to crumble in the playoffs in the lights of MSG in the Garden. It's going to be very hard for them to kind of deal with that, and I don't know. Tatum, Brown, they kind of seem to break down in the playoffs, and I think in the big moment like that, it may not work. In the regular season, I don't see the Knicks catching them or beating them. But playoff matchup, I really could go either way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think the Knicks, they really, really need these guys back. I think especially on the defensive end when it comes to OG Anunoby, then on the offensive end when it comes to Julius Randle. Right now, it's Jalen Brunson. When he is not having a good night, the supporting cast is able to pick him up. But to have the ability to spread it around to Julius Randle when he comes back, to get it down low to OG Anunoby, it might spread the ball a little bit better and give them more opportunity to score on the offensive end than they have been able to recently without them.
Cody Bellinger officially re-signed with the Chicago Cubs for 3 years and $80 million. The former MVP had a resurgent year with the Cubs, hitting .307 and 26 home runs in a 4.4 WAR on a one-year contract. Now headed back to the north side, some analysts thought he was in for a mega contract. So Ben, is this deal a letdown?
I don't think so. I think this actually, maybe for Cody Bellinger, maybe for Scott Boras, it's a letdown of a contract because they were expecting in the $170 to $200 million range. But for the Cubs, for what he could possibly pivot off of, I think this is a great deal because it's much cheaper. If he's consistent and he's plays the way he did last season, then this is an absolute steal. And although he might opt out if he plays the same way and try and get that big contract again, that's fine because now they have a chance to try and maybe sign some other players with the cheap because he's on a cheaper contract and maybe entice some new star players to come here and play because they have the money to play with. But it all depends on whether the owner is willing to spend it. But I think it's good for the Cubs, good for morale to get Bellinger back in that lineup.
No, I agree. I think Bellinger, having him back, is going to be a huge help to this offense, to the young players especially. Also, he has the ability to move to first base if he starts to break down a little bit. But for the Cubs overall, great signing, though I do think it's a letdown for him. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Ben will be joined by one of our producers, Alex Brooks, here on WTOP 10.
Be your last chance to see one occur for 2 decades, as the next time one will be visible over the continental U.S.
He's May 84. Yarrow told police in the hospital that he had pressed the doorbell and waited.
They mix with oxygen and nitrogen. They become briefly
What's going on?
Yeah, dude, we go on at like 11:30. It's like
no.
What do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30?
Yeah, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa.
You know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow. Get a close up of that one. Matthew,
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Stick to Sports. Joining me now is Alex Brooks, one of our producers. Alex, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, thanks, Ben. Starting off on the diamond as spring training has made its way here in the month of February as the St. Louis Cardinals have reached an agreement with three-time All-Star shortstop Brendan Crawford on a one-year deal. The two-time World Series champ has been brought in with Tommy Edman's opening status being in question. Ben, as the season is around the corner, does the 37-year-old shortstop have anything left in the tank?
You know, he might have a little bit left in the tank. I wouldn't say necessarily he's going to be putting up MVP type numbers, maybe even solid all-star type numbers. I think his best role is for that veteran presence for the young shortstop in St. Louis, Mason Wynn, you know, really kind of mentoring him as he comes up and, you know, tries to cement himself in St. Louis. I think that platoon role, or maybe as a late defensive switch, whether it's at shortstop or at second base or third base, we'll see what the Cardinals want to decide for him. But ultimately, I think what he has left in the tank isn't as much as he would have had a few years ago. I kind of thought he would retire as a Giant, as a lifelong Giant. So it's a little bit surprising, but I think he's a good fit for this veteran role. And I think it might actually work out pretty well in their favor going forward.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to him to leaving the San Francisco Giants, a team that he won 2 championships with. So able to be in that role, as you were mentioning, I'm kind of seeing as like a Yankees Matt Carpenter role. Maybe he can arise to someone who you can kind of rely on as that veteran presence, as you were mentioning, someone who can kind of revitalize his career in some way. But you know, being that veteran presence, that can really help this Cardinals team because he obviously knows the championship pedigree. He obviously knows, you know, he's been a Silver Slugger, he's been a Gold Glove, he's been around this league for a long time. So someone who you can really rely on.
Absolutely, and I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm sure that Mason Wynn's going to try and soak up as much as he can from the All-Star, from the World Series champion.
Yeah, exactly. Moving to the college hoops now, the defending national champions defeated the Villanova Wildcats 78-54 on Saturday. Cam Spencer had 25 points and 4 rebounds and a 47-point second half that catapulted the Huskies into the win. Ben, the Huskies got the win, but they fell down to 3 in the AP poll. How are you feeling about this decision made by the AP?
You know, I was talking to Brian before the show, and he was seething, and he made a lot of good points, you know, about how this new ranking is not great. I mean, they lost. Yes, they did lose to a team worse than them, but I mean, every team in college basketball has been worse than them this season because they were number 1. But Creighton was ranked. They were ranked number 15, and then a team like Purdue lost to unranked Ohio State not too long ago as well. So how is Purdue still ahead of UConn right now? It remains to be seen, but I mean, there's still a little bit of time left. They can make it back to that 1, but it's going to be difficult, especially they're going to need a couple losses from these other teams ahead of them in Houston and in Purdue in order to maybe jump back, unless the AP poll wants to just put them back after a couple more wins.
Yeah, especially, and I mean, being able to, you know, they lost to Creighton, obviously, as you were mentioning, they were a ranked team, but I feel like, you know, you're now at 3, but the team shouldn't really focus on that. They should really just be focusing on the games forward and then preparing for March Madness.
Absolutely.
Staying on the court, the AP poll was released earlier today and had some interesting movement in the standings, with UConn, as we mentioned, falling to 3 and Duke falling all the way to 10. Ben, what team are you seeing from this top 10 teams to make a deep run in the tournament?
You know, it's interesting that, you know, you're going to be a little bit easy because I feel like you go like, oh, the top teams are going to go. And I think that's true. I think Houston, Tennessee could be a team. Like, they're at number 4 right now, a team that could, you know, make a little bit of a deep run. It's going to be interesting because you never know with March. So, but then you got UConn, of course. But then a team like UNC could, you know, they're a little bit lower in the top 10. But they can still make a run in March. It all depends on their matchups. It all depends on their level of play heading into the tournament.
Yeah, and something that I want to kind of bring up is the San Diego State Aztecs. I mean, they were in that Final Four last year, and obviously they're lower on the rank and not in the top 10 teams, but they could be a surprising team that can make a run in this tournament.
I agree with you. We are going to take a quick break here on Stick to Sports, and thanks once again to Alex for the fast break. And when we come back, Brian, Alex, and I will head into extra innings. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Stick to Sports on WTOP 10.
What's going on?
Yeah, dude, we go on at like 11:30. It's like.
No.
What do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30?
Matt, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa.
You know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow. Get a close up of that one. Matthew.
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
We'll deep dive into our feelings in our Real Talk segment. Stay tuned because it's about to get real.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Major Discussions.
Back to Stick to Sports. Now let's get ready for another edition of everyone's favorite segment. We are back here for the spring semester of extra innings. We're going to get right into it, guys. Kansas versus BYU. Ben, we'll start you off.
I think this is pretty simple. I think we'll just go with Kansas. You know, they're still one of the top teams in the country. Got to go with Kansas.
Give me BYU. I think an upset is coming for the Jayhawks. BYU, tough team. I know Kansas is at home, but I just like BYU right here. I don't know.
I'm going to go with Kansas, so I'm going to agree with Ben on this one. We're going to move over to Wake Forest at 6.5 favorites against Notre Dame. Brian, let's have you start off.
Give me Wake Forest going back-to-back. I know it's not an upset because Notre Dame's actually a worse team, but I like it back-to-back wins. They're riding it high. Give me the Demon Deacons.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here, Brian. I also am going to take Wake Forest. I mean, they're going to come off, a big win. They're going to be riding high a little bit. And I think they can go in and they can defeat Notre Dame. I think that the Demon Deacons, I'll agree with you there, Brian.
Demon Deacons all around, boys. We are taking Wake Forest in this second matchup. We'll head to the third matchup, Colorado versus Dallas. Ben, I'll have you start off.
The Stars, the Avalanche, the Stars, they're in the playoffs right now, but the Avalanche, they're one of the best teams in the NHL. You got to go with Colorado. They look fantastic. And, I mean, while the Stars have been, really good this season, really solid, I feel like you can't bet against the Avs.
Yeah, I'm right with you right there. The Avalanche, one of the best teams in the NHL. I know that they're both pushing for the playoffs. They're both pretty close to each other in the standings, but I just like the Avalanche a lot more. Give me the Avs.
Yeah, we're going to go 3 for 3 as well. Avs here. And Matt is telling me to go speed run, so let's speed run through this. Tampa Bay at Philadelphia. Brian, go.
Give me the Lightning. That's it. Go.
I'm going to go with the Flyers in this one. I think the Metro is better than the Atlantic.
Philly all around. Well, not all around. Brian, you took that. Flyers, I am going to take. We are going to go to our last matchup, the New York Knicks versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Ben, start us off.
It's not even a question. I'm going with the Knicks, of course. The Knicks, I think, are just the better team. Go Knicks.
Give me the Pelicans. Knicks coming off a back-to-back. I like the Pelicans a lot more.
Yeah, give me New York. We will take the Knicks on this one. I'm a Nets fan, but I'm going to be taking the Knicks on this one.
Let's go with the Knicks. They're better. But that's all the time we have on this episode of Stick to Sports. Be sure to tune in next week right here on WTOP 10.